Well, soon after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a couple of years later, they had started sanctioning this shadow fleet of oil tankers and adding to the existing sanctions on tankers transporting Iranian oil, Venezuelan oil. But no one had enforced those sanctions until now. So this just shows the hollowness of that previous policy. You could blacklist these tankers, but they could still sail fairly freely on the high seas. And the U.S. has taken dramatic action to stop that. Now, the one that they seized off the coast of Iceland today had been sanctioned in 2024 for carrying Iranian oil. It had taken a trip from Venezuela, changed its flag, hastily painted a Russian flag on the ship, and changed its name. And the U.S. Coast Guard boarded it, despite it being escorted by a Russian submarine. Now, I think Putin's got to be worried because the price of oil is coming down. The price of Russian oil in particular has come down as a result of U.S. sanctions. And now the U.S. has finally decided to enforce those sanctions on blacklisted, these shadow fleet tankers. So that's going to spell trouble for him in terms of Russian oil revenues dropping even further.
Stephanie, is there a sense that today's action is a one-off isolated event or maybe signal a significant change in U.S. policy as it relates to this shadow fleet?
No, it's not a one-off policy. And in fact, U.S. Southern Command just announced that they had seized another tanker in the Caribbean, a Venezuelan, we believe to be a Venezuelan-linked tanker. It was flagless, and that they are transporting it to the U.S. So it does seem, particularly with any tanker linked to Venezuela, that they will go after it as a way of enforcing this blockade on Venezuela and ensuring that Venezuela's new president, Delcy Rodriguez, toes the line and does what the U.S. says.
And Stephanie, as Tom just mentioned, President Trump is out with some tweets as it relates to NATO and how the U.S. is committed to NATO. And conversely, NATO, is only feared by China and Russia because of the U.S. presence there. What's the feeling just over the last several days in European capitals about some of these moves by the U.S.?
Well, the U.S. operation to take out Maduro and take him to the United States has set off this whole debate over whether or not the U.S. will do the same with Greenland. Trump has talked about taking Greenland in his first term. The talk returned, particularly in the light of the operation in Venezuela. And there's the concern in European capitals was such that you had this joint statement by European leaders saying that they stand with Denmark and want to ensure the independence of Greenland. Now, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, told lawmakers that the U.S. was not considering military action on Greenland, that they were looking to buy Greenland. I mean, the whole thing makes very little sense. There's an existing U.S. base in Greenland. The Danish officials have said they are open to the U.S. establishing additional bases, to exploring mining developments and the like. So there's no real reason for that. It would throw NATO into an existential crisis if they did do any military action there.
Joining us from London, Stephanie Baker, with us, a wonderful book, Punishing Putin, as we look at the news of the morning. Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney will drive this story forward here in the coming hours. A few more minutes with Ms. Baker. Stephanie, Elizabeth Economy has a brilliant essay in the New Foreign Affairs out just days ago on the Arctic Ocean. I would say most Americans listening and watching right now are as ignorant about the Arctic Ocean as I am. I mean, it was Ice Station Zebra a million years ago. Yep. I think Sean Connery was in the movie. With all of your work, Stephanie Baker, inform us of what the Arctic Ocean means tangentially to China and specifically to Russia.
The Arctic is the new battleground, and I think that's why Greenland is considered so strategic. That Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles could fly over the Arctic and target the U.S., and the first early warning signals would come from that U.S. military base in Greenland. Obviously, with climate change, the Arctic is opening up. It's more passable in the summer months. China wants to get in on the action as well. There's been some Chinese investment in Greenland. So, this is definitely the new battleground. And, I think there's a belief in the Trump administration that they need to beef up and get a bigger presence on Greenland, whether that's through acquiring it or maybe just doing some sort of security cooperation agreement. I suspect that they will try to do some kind of deal that Trump can announce and brag that he's, expanded the U.S. security architecture in some way.
Thank you so much for joining us. One final quick question. How is Mr. Putin's health?
It's the million-dollar question. I think reports of his imminent demise are exaggerated. From all the reporting I've seen, he's a 72-year-old man with the normal ailments of anyone of that age, but that there's no serious health concerns from the Western intelligence officials that I've spoken to.